The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their specialized atmosphere pods, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and electronic tones. At the center of it all, Ambassador Taemin of the Valari stood trembling. His translucent blue skin showed patterns of deep distress, dark purple, waves that rippled across his body like storm clouds. The gill slits on his neck fluttered rapidly as he struggled to speak in the common galactic tongue. "Honored council members," Taemin began, his voice carrying the musical quality of his aquatic species. "My people face extinction. The Krex Empire has already consumed 3 of our colony worlds. Lumina Prime, our homeworld, will fall within 30 rotations if we receive no aid." A heavy silence fell over the assembly. Everyone knew about the Krex Empire. They were the nightmare that haunted the Outer Rim worlds, a species that strip-mined entire planets for resources and left nothing but dead rock behind. Their military was ruthless, efficient, and had never been defeated in open warfare. Counselor Vex of the Xanthari Confederacy was the first to respond. His insectoid form clicked disapprovingly from within his methane-filled pod. The Xanthari expressed sympathy for the Valari situation. However, we cannot risk our own worlds for a conflict we cannot win. The Krex fleet numbers over 200 warships. The Morvic Alliance representative, a crystalline being whose faceted body reflected the chamber's lights, chimed in with a sound like breaking glass. "Our analysis indicates a 0.3% probability of success against Krex forces. The Alliance cannot justify such losses for minimal gain." One by one, the major powers declined. The Silicon Hegemony cited resource constraints. The Ethereal Collective claimed philosophical objections to warfare. The United Merchant Guild simply stated it would be bad for business. Taemin's distress patterns grew darker. His aide, Dr. Heijun, placed a webbed hand on his shoulder. The elderly Valari scientist had spent his life studying galactic politics, but he had never seen such callous disregard for an entire species. "Please," Taemin whispered, his voice breaking, "we are not warriors. We are farmers, artists, scientists. We have no weapons that can pierce Krex shields. Our ships are designed for research, not combat. We cannot defend ourselves against such monsters." The council chamber erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Several representatives shifted in their pods, but none changed their position. The mathematics were simple. The Krex were too strong, and the Valari were too weak. Intervention would only mean more dead worlds. Counselor Zenth, the Ancient, leader of the council, raised one of his 4 arms for silence. His weathered face showed the weight of countless difficult decisions. "The council sympathizes with the Valari plight. However, we cannot order our member states to commit suicide. The Krex Empire has proven unstoppable." "Then we will broadcast an open distress call," Taemin said desperately. "To every world, every species, every station that can receive hyperspace communications. Perhaps someone somewhere will have the courage that this council lacks." The words stung, but they were true. Dr. Heijun stepped forward, his scientific mind already working on the technical details. "We will transmit on all frequencies in all known languages." A plea for aid to any who might listen. Within hours, the message was broadcasting across the galaxy. It contained the coordinates of Lumina Prime, detailed scans of the approaching Krex fleet, and tactical data about their previous attacks. Most importantly, it contained recordings of Valari children singing their traditional songs, a reminder that these were living beings, not just statistics. The response was predictable. Most civilizations simply ignored the message. A few sent polite expressions of sympathy but no offers of help. The hegemony of suns actually responded with a formal statement advising the Valari to surrender quickly to minimize suffering. 3 days passed. The Krex fleet grew closer to Lumina Prime with each passing hour. Long-range sensors showed their massive dreadnoughts moving through hyperspace like hungry sharks. Taemin barely slept, monitoring the communication channels for any sign of hope. On the 4th day, something changed. The message came through a relatively primitive communication array from a small system in What the star charts labeled as the Orion Arm, a quiet spiral of space that most galactic maps marked as unexplored backwater, the signal was surprisingly clear despite the distance. "This is Captain Sora Kim of the Terran Space Navy commanding the destroyer Sol's Fury. We have received your distress call and are currently reviewing the tactical data. Request permission to proceed to Lumina Prime System with available fleet assets." Dr. Hagen nearly dropped his datapad. He quickly ran the stellar coordinates through the galactic database. The system was listed as Sol, inhabited by a species called humans that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their technology rating was classified as primitive but promising. Taman stared at the communication console in disbelief. "They want to help? But they are barely spacefaring. Our files show they only developed hyperspace capability 50 rotations ago." "Perhaps they do not understand the situation," Dr. Hagen suggested gently. "Should we explain the odds to them?" Before Taman could answer, another message arrived. This time the voice was different, younger, more energetic. "This is Commander Jinwoo Park, tactical officer aboard Sol's Fury. We finished analyzing your data packets. The Kreks appear to rely heavily on shield technology and overwhelming firepower. Standard galactic doctrine seems to favor direct engagement, which plays to their strengths. We have some ideas about alternative approaches." The two Velari exchanged glances. Alternative approaches? What could a barely spacefaring species possibly know about fighting the most feared military force in the galaxy? A third message followed quickly. "This is Lieutenant Commander Mi Nachoi Intelligence Division. We're curious about the Kreks. Psychological profile? Do they have any known fears or taboos? Also, what environmental conditions do they prefer? Our databases are limited, but we're always interested in learning about new species." Dr. Haejun found himself almost smiling despite the dire situation. These humans seemed remarkably calm about facing impossible odds. Either they were incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. "Admiral Taman," came another transmission, this time back to Captain Kim's voice. "We understand you're facing extinction. We've been there ourselves a few times. Our fleet may be small, but we're willing to stand with you. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the odds." For the first time in days, the distress patterns on Taman's skin began to fade. Here was someone willing to help, even if they seemed hopelessly outmatched. "Captain Kim," he replied, "we accept your offer of assistance. But I must warn you, our projections show less than 1% chance of survival against the Kreks fleet." The response came back almost immediately, and Taman would remember the words for the rest of his life. "Ambassador, where we come from, 1% is pretty good odds. We'll take it. Sol's Fury out." As the communication ended, Dr. Hagen pulled up what little information they had about these humans. The species profile was remarkably sparse, bipedal, carbon-based, relatively short-lived. But one detail caught his attention. Their homeworld classification code made him do a double-take. "Taman," he whispered, "look at this. Their planet, it's classified as a Class 12 Deathworld." "That must be an error," Taman replied absently, still focused on coordinating with the approaching human fleet. No intelligent species could evolve on a Class 12. The conditions would be lethal. Dr. Hagen stared at the data, his scientific mind racing. Perhaps there was more to these humans than their simple files suggested. Perhaps, just perhaps, they had found allies who understood survival in ways the galaxy had never imagined. In the depths of space, 3 small human destroyers dropped out of hyperspace and began their journey toward what most of the galaxy believed would be their doom. The neutral meeting station floated in empty space between 3 star systems. It was an old trading post that had seen better days, but it served its purpose as a place where different species could meet safely. Ambassador Taman waited nervously in the main docking bay, watching through the transparent walls as 3 small ships approached. The human vessels looked strange to his eyes. Where most galactic ships were smooth and curved, these were angular and practical. They had extra armor plating welded in odd places and weapon mounts that seemed almost crude compared to the elegant designs he was used to. The lead ship bore the name Soul's Fury in both human script and galactic standard. Dr. Hagen stood beside him, studying his datapad. "Their ships are smaller than I expected," he whispered. "The largest is barely half the size of a Krex patrol vessel." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic clang that echoed through the station. Moments later, the airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The first human to step through was a woman of medium height with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was dark blue with silver insignia, and she moved with the confident stride of someone used to command. "Ambassador Taemin," she said, extending her hand in what Dr. Haejun recognized as a human greeting gesture. "I'm Captain So-Ra Kim. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Taemin carefully took her hand, surprised by the firmness of her grip. Human skin felt warm and dry compared to his own aquatic adaptations. "Captain Kim, we are grateful that you answered our call, though I must admit we hoped for ... door ships." Behind Captain Kim came two other humans. A younger man with sharp eyes introduced himself as Commander Jinwoo Park, and a woman with short black hair gave her name as Lieutenant Commander Mi-na Choi. All three wore the same practical uniforms and had the same alert, watchful expressions. "We understand your concerns," Captain Kim said as they moved to the station's meeting room. "Our fleet is small by galactic standards. But sometimes it's not about the size of the fleet, it's about how you use it." The meeting room was designed for multiple species, with adjustable atmosphere controls and seating that could accommodate different body types. Taemin activated the aquatic section, filling his area with a fine mist that would keep his gills moist. He noticed the humans showed no discomfort at the humid environment. Dr. Haejun spread out holographic displays showing the tactical situation. The Krex fleet appeared as angry red dots moving steadily toward Lumina Prime. 200 warships, he explained. Each one capable of destroying a city with a single salvo. Their shields can withstand anything in our arsenal. Commander Park leaned forward, studying the display intently. "What's their formation preference? Do they fight in groups or as individual units?" "They prefer overwhelming force," Taemin replied. "Wave attacks designed to break enemy morale quickly. They have never faced organized resistance for more than a few hours." Lieutenant Commander Choi made notes on a small device. "What about their supply lines? How do they maintain such a large fleet in enemy territory?" Dr. Haechun's gill slits fluttered in surprise. Most military commanders focused on firepower and shields. These humans were asking different questions entirely. They consume what they conquer. Strip the resources from each world to fuel their advance. Interesting, Captain Kim mused. So they're dependent on continuous victory to maintain their logistics. That gives us options. Taemin felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly dampened by reality. "Captain, I appreciate your confidence, but you must understand the mathematics. You have 3 ships. They have 200. Each of their dreadnoughts outguns your entire fleet." The humans exchanged glances. Commander Park smiled slightly. "Ambassador, in our experience, mathematics only tells part of the story. Mind if we ask about your world's defensive capabilities?" For the next hour, Dr. Haejun provided detailed information about Valari technology, planetary defenses, and population centers. The humans listened carefully, asking specific questions about environmental conditions, industrial capacity, and civilian evacuation procedures. "Your people are primarily aquatic?" Lieutenant Commander Choi asked. "Yes, though. We can survive in air for extended periods. Our cities are built around our great coral reefs and underwater forests." "And your planet's gravity?" "Standard galactic, about 0.3 of your measurement system." The humans exchanged another look. "Captain," Commander Park said quietly, "that could work in our favor." Captain Kim nodded. "Ambassador, we'd like to propose something unconventional. Instead of meeting the Krex in open space where they have every advantage, what if we fought them in your home system? Use your planet's environment as a tactical asset." Taemin's distress patterns began to show. But that would put our civilians at risk. If we fail, they would be trapped. If we don't try, they're dead anyway, Captain Kim said gently but firmly. Sometimes the only way to save lives is to risk them. Dr. Haejun had been quietly studying the human data files during the conversation. What he found puzzled him greatly. Captain Kim, if I may ask, your species file lists some unusual characteristics. It says your homeworld has gravity 3 times galactic standard. That's correct. And atmospheric pressure that would crush most species? Also correct. Temperature. Variations that span over 140 degrees? Captain Kim shrugged. Earth can be challenging. We adapt. Dr. Haejun stared at his readings. Captain, according to this data, your planet should be uninhabitable. The radiation levels alone ... are manageable if you know what you're doing, Lieutenant Commander Choi finished. Every world has its dangers. You learn to live with them, or you don't survive. The casual way she said it made Taemin's skin ripple with unease. These humans spoke about deadly conditions. The way his people discussed weather patterns. Commander Park pulled up a tactical display. Here's what we propose. We help evacuate your outer colonies, the ones the Kreks will hit first. Then we fall back to Lumina Prime and prepare defenses. When they arrive, we don't fight their kind of battle, we fight ours. What kind of battle is that? Taemin asked. The 3 humans smiled, and there was something predatory in their expressions that made Dr. Haechun's scientific mind take notice. The kind where we make them come to us, Captain Kim said. The kind where we use every advantage we can find, no matter how small. The kind where we don't fight fair. Fighting fair is how you lose against superior numbers, Commander Park added. We prefer to win. Taemin looked at Dr. Haejun, who was still staring at the human data files, with fascination and growing concern. Captain Kim, may I ask, how many wars has your species fought? You mean total throughout our history? Lieutenant Commander Choi asked. Hard to say. We've been fighting something or someone for pretty much our entire recorded history. Wars. Natural disasters, hostile wildlife, climate changes, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, ice ages. She counted on her fingers as she spoke, and Taemin realized she was being completely serious. Your species has survived asteroid impacts? Dr. Haejun whispered. Several, Captain Kim confirmed. The big one that killed the dinosaurs would have been inconvenient, but humans weren't around yet. We've dealt with smaller ones since then. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These weren't just another spacefaring species offering help. These were survivors from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years and failed. So, Captain Kim said, standing up and extending her hand again, are you ready to show the Kreks what happens when Deathworlders fight back? Taemin took her hand, feeling something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Yes, Captain, we are ready. As the meeting ended and the humans returned to their ships, Dr. Haejun pulled up the classification code for Earth one more time. Class 12. Deathworld, he had thought it was an error, but now he was beginning to understand. The galaxy had sent the Villari their prayers and sympathy. But the humans had sent something much more dangerous, themselves. The evacuation of Coral Station was going badly. The Villari research outpost orbited their outermost colony world, and its inhabitants were struggling to load their most precious belongings onto transport ships. Families clutched their young ones close while elderly Villari moved slowly through the corridors, their translucent skin showing patterns of fear and confusion. Captain Sora Kim watched from the Bridge of Souls, fury as her 2 escort destroyers helped coordinate the civilian ships. The evacuation should have been routine, but long-range sensors had detected Kreks patrol ships moving faster than expected through hyperspace. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, announced Communications Officer Soo-jin from her station. Kreks. Signature, 3 ships. Commander Jin-Woo Park checked his tactical display. They're moving to intercept the refugee convoy. The civilian ships won't reach hyperspace in time. Captain Kim didn't hesitate. All ships, battle stations, move to intercept. Protect those transports at all costs? Dr. Haejun, who had been observing from the guest quarters, hurried to the bridge as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The human crew moved with practiced efficiency, their voices calm and professional even as they prepared for what seemed like certain death. "Captain," he said breathlessly, "those are Krex heavy cruisers. Each one is twice the size of your ship. Surely we should retreat and try again later?" Lieutenant Commander Mina Choi looked up from her intelligence console. "Doctor, if we retreat, those families die. That's not acceptable." The 3 human destroyers accelerated toward the approaching Krex ships, their engines burning bright blue against the starfield. On the main screen, the enemy vessels grew larger, dark, angular ships, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. "Enemy ships are charging weapons," reported Weapons Officer Chang Ho from his station. "They're targeting the lead transport." "Not if I can help it," Captain Kim muttered. "All ships, attack formation Gamma, target their sensor arrays first." What happened next defied everything Dr. Hagen thought he knew about space combat. Instead of the careful, long-range engagement he expected, the human ships dove straight at the Krex vessels like hunting birds attacking prey. The Soul's fury shuddered as enemy fire struck her shields. Warning lights flashed red across the bridge, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. But Captain Kim remained calm, calling out orders as if she were directing a training exercise. "Direct hit on the port engine," Chief Engineer Dong-Soo reported from below decks. "We're losing power to the main gun." "Switch to auxiliary," Kim replied without missing a beat. "And reroute power from life support to the shields." Dr. Haechun's gill slits fluttered in alarm. "Life support? Captain, if you lose that system, We'll hold our breath," she said simply, then spoke into her communicator. "All hands, emergency oxygen masks. We're going to get a little stuffy in here." The Krex concentrated their fire on Soul's Fury, recognizing her as the command ship. Massive energy blasts tore through her armor, venting atmosphere and causing fires throughout the vessel. The bridge's main viewport cracked, and emergency force fields flickered to life to maintain pressure. Dr. Hagen watched in horror as human crew members continued working at their stations even as sparks flew around them and smoke filled the air. When a control panel exploded near Communications Officer Sujin, she simply moved to a backup station and continued her work, ignoring the burns on her hands. "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Damage Control Specialist Wu Jin. "Emergency. Bulkheads are holding, but we've lost gravity in that section." "Casualties?" Captain Kim asked. "None, ma'am. Crew is working in 0G with magnetic boots." The matter-of-fact way he reported this made Dr. Hagen realize something profound. These humans weren't just brave. They were treating conditions that would panic most species as minor inconveniences. The battle continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The human ships darted between the larger Krex vessels like small fish avoiding sharks, striking at weak points and then disappearing before return fire could find them. Then disaster struck. A lucky shot from the lead Krex cruiser pierced Soul's Fury's main hull, and the bridge's atmosphere began venting into space. The breach was too large for the emergency systems to seal. "Abandon bridge," Captain Kim ordered as the evacuation. Alarms began sounding, but instead of panic, Dr. Hagen witnessed something incredible. The human crew calmly put on emergency vacuum suits and continued working at their stations. Within minutes, they were operating in hard vacuum as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Doctor," Lieutenant Commander Choi said, her voice coming through the suit radio, "you might want to put on one of these. The air's getting a bit thin." Dr. Haejun struggled into the emergency suit designed for his species, his scientific mind, trying to process what he was seeing. "You're fighting a space battle in vacuum? This is impossible." "It's just another environmental hazard," Commander Park replied as he coordinated targeting data. "We deal with worse stuff planetside all the time." The tide of battle turned when the human ships executed a maneuver that Dr. Hagen would later learn was called ramming speed. Instead of retreating when their shields failed, they accelerated directly toward the enemy ships, the Krex commanders. Expecting the humans to break off at the last second, suddenly found 3 heavily damaged. but still functional warships bearing down on them at full speed. Panic spread through the enemy fleet as they realized these aliens were actually willing to ram their ships to protect the civilians. "All stop," came the transmission from the lead Krex ship. "We withdraw. These creatures are insane." The Krex ships turned and fled into hyperspace, leaving the refugee convoy to escape safely. But Sol's Fury was dying, her life support systems failing and her hull holding together, mostly through the crew's determination and emergency patches. "Captain," Chief Engineer Dong-Su reported, "we need to dock with the station for major repairs. Life support will fail within the hour." As they limped back to Coral Station, Dr. Heijin found himself alone with Captain Kim in what remained of her ready room. The walls were scorched, the furniture was floating in zero gravity, and they were both still wearing vacuum suits. "Captain," he said carefully, "may I ask you something about your homeworld?" "Of course." Dr. Heijin pulled up his datapad, which had somehow survived the battle. "According to our files, Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, but that should be impossible. No intelligent life could evolve under those conditions." Captain Kim was quiet for a moment, looking out through the cracked viewport at the stars. "Doctor, what exactly does your classification system consider lethal?" "Well," he began, consulting his notes, "any world with gravity above 0.5 standard is considered crushing. Atmospheric pressure above 50 kilopascals is dangerous. Temperature variations beyond 20 degrees cause biological stress. Radiation levels above—" "Doctor," Kim interrupted gently, "our gravity is 3 times your standard. Our atmospheric pressure would crush most galactic species. Our temperatures range from -90 to +60 degrees. We have hurricanes that can level cities, earthquakes that reshape continents, and volcanic eruptions that can change our climate for years." Dr. Heijin stared at her. "How do you survive?" "We adapt," she said simply. "We learn, we get stronger. And when something threatens us, we fight back with everything we have. That's what living on a death world teaches you. Never give up, never surrender, and always protect your own." The implications hit him like a physical blow. The humans hadn't answered their distress call, despite coming from a death world. They had answered it because they came from a death world. "Your entire species," he whispered, "are survivors." Captain Kim nodded. "Every single one of us, Doctor. And now you're about to find out what that means for the Krex Empire. As rescue ships arrived to help with repairs, Dr. Heijin realized that the galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson. When you threaten the innocent, sometimes the universe sends help. And sometimes that help comes from a small blue world where even the children learn to fight against impossible odds. The main Krex invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a swarm of metal locusts. 200 warships in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. At their center, the massive flagship Devourer of Worlds stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern on the bridge of Sol's Fury. Now patched together with emergency repairs and spare parts, Captain Sora Kim watched the enemy fleet deploy. Her small task force of 3 human destroyers looked pathetic compared to the armada facing them, but her expression remained calm. "They're hailing us," Communications Officer Sujin reported. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the reptilian features of War Master Thakmur. His scaled face was marked with ritual scars, and his yellow eyes burned with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with activity as hundreds of Krex officers prepared for what they assumed would be a quick victory. "I am War Master Thakmur of the Krex Empire," the alien commander announced, his voice carrying the authority of countless conquered worlds. "You will surrender your vessels and prepare to be processed. Your worlds will feed our expansion, and your people will serve our glory." Captain Kim leaned forward in her command chair, her voice steady and clear. "This is Captain Sora Kim of the Terran Space Navy. We're here to protect the Valari people. I suggest you turn around and go home." War Master Thakmur's laugh was like grinding metal. 3 tiny ships against the might of the Empire? Your bravery is admirable but pointless. You have 10 minutes to surrender before we demonstrate why the galaxy fears us. Counteroffer, Kim replied. You have 10 minutes to leave before we demonstrate why you should fear us. The transmission ended, leaving the human bridge in tense silence. Commander Jin-Woo Park checked his tactical displays while Lieutenant Commander Min-na Choi monitored enemy communications. All ships report ready, Park announced. Though I have to say, the odds aren't great. When have they ever been? Captain, Kim asked with a slight smile. Commence Operation Hornet's Nest. What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded galactic history. Instead of forming up for a traditional engagement, the three human ships scattered in different directions. Moving erratically and unpredictably, the Soul's Fury dove straight down relative to the enemy formation, using the gravity well of a nearby asteroid to slingshot around at impossible angles. The destroyer Bizun's Pride went high, disappearing behind Lumina Prime's largest moon. The third ship, Inchen's Wrath, seemed to flee toward the outer system. War Master Thakmer watched this display with growing confusion. What are they doing? This is not proper fleet tactics. His tactical officer, a young Krex named Sektar, studied the sensor readings. They appear to be ... running away, War Master, but in different directions. Cowards, Thakmer snarled. Send squadrons to hunt them down, make examples of them. But as the Krex fleet spread out to pursue the fleeing human ships, they walked directly into the trap. The humans weren't running, they were positioning themselves for guerrilla warfare. In space, Soul's Fury suddenly appeared from behind a large asteroid, her weapons blazing. But instead of targeting the Krex ship's heavily armored hulls, she aimed for their sensor arrays and communication dishes. Before the enemy could respond, she was gone again, disappearing into the asteroid field. Damage report, Thakmer demanded. Minimal hull damage, but we've lost long-range sensors on 3 ships, Sektar replied, his voice uncertain. War Master, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered. The pattern continued for hours. The human ships would appear from unexpected angles, strike at support systems rather than main targets, and vanish before return fire could find them. They used every piece of debris, every gravitational anomaly, every shadow as cover. Lieutenant Jae-hyun led a squadron of human fighters in attacks that defied all logic. His pilots flew their small craft through debris fields that should have shredded them, using the wreckage of ancient battles as cover. They struck at the Krex fleet's fuel tankers and supply ships, the unglamorous targets that kept the war machine running. Sir, one of his pilots, Ensign Kyung-suk, reported over the radio, I'm being painted by 3 enemy fighters. Requesting support, negative, Jae-hyun replied calmly. Execute crazy even maneuver, use the debris field. Ensign Kyung-suk dove her fighter into a dense cluster of metal fragments that would crush most ships. But the human craft was designed for atmospheric flight and hurricane force winds. A little space debris was just another day at the office. She emerged behind her pursuers and destroyed 2 of them before they realized what had happened. The real shock came when Major Kyung-ho's marine units began boarding operations. But they didn't use docking tubes or shuttle bays like civilized species. Instead, they cut through the hulls of Krex ships with plasma torches while floating in hard vacuum. Security footage from the boarded vessels spread quickly through the Krex fleet. It showed humans working in conditions that should have killed them instantly. 0 atmosphere, extreme radiation, temperatures that froze their breath. Yet they moved through these environments as if they were taking a casual walk. They're not wearing full environmental suits, whispered a Krex engineering officer as he watched the recordings. Just basic breathing masks and temperature regulation. How are they not dead? The psychological impact was devastating. Krex crew members, raised on worlds with carefully controlled climates and protected environments, began to believe they were fighting demons rather than mortals. The turning point came when communications specialist Su Jin managed something that shouldn't have been possible. She hacked into the Krex communication network. Using techniques developed for surviving information warfare on Earth, she not only intercepted their tactical data but began broadcasting Human combat footage directly to their ships. The images were terrifying to the Krek's mindset. Humans fighting with damaged equipment in conditions that would liquefy Krek's biology. Human Marines continuing to advance even after taking wounds that should have been fatal. Human pilots flying through storms of debris that look like the gates of hell. War Master, his communication officer reported with a trembling voice. We're receiving surrender requests from 17 ships in the outer squadrons. Surrender requests? Thakmor roared. From whom? From our own crews, sir. They're refusing to engage the humans further. The final blow came when Commander Park implemented what he casually called Protocol Phoenix. The humans deliberately allowed 3 of their damaged ships to be captured by Krek's boarding parties. The enemy celebrated these victories, towing the derelict human vessels into their formation. Then the ships exploded, but not from bombs or self-destructs. The human crews had systematically sabotaged every critical system while pretending to be unconscious, then teleported to safety at the last moment using emergency transporters. The Kreks lost more ships to their own victories than they had to direct combat. This is impossible, War Master Thakmor muttered as he watched his fleet fragment around him. They should be dead? They should all be dead? War Master, Sektar said quietly, perhaps we should consider withdrawal. We've lost 37 ships, and the humans haven't lost a single vessel. On the screen, Sol's Fury appeared again, her hull scarred and patched but still fighting. Captain Kim's voice came through clearly. War Master Thakmor, this is your final warning. Leave the system now, or we'll show you what humans do when we stop being polite. For the first time in his military career, War Master Thakmor felt something he had never experienced before: fear. These weren't just warriors. They were something else entirely. Something that treated death as an inconvenience and impossible odds as a challenge. Signal the fleet, he said finally. Tactical withdrawal. We need to reassess our strategy. As the Krek's fleet began to retreat, Dr. Hagen stood on the observation deck of Lumina Prime's orbital station, watching the impossible unfold. The humans had done more than win a battle. They had shattered the myth of Krek's invincibility. How? He whispered to himself. How did they do it? The answer, he was beginning to understand, lay in the fundamental difference between a species that conquered and a species that survived. The Kreks had spent millennia crushing weaker civilizations, but humans had spent millennia being crushed by their own world and learning how to fight back. War Master Thakmor paced back and forth across the bridge of his flagship, his clawed feet clicking against the metal deck. The retreat had been tactical, he told himself. A temporary withdrawal to reassess the situation. But as reports continued to flow in from across his fleet, the truth became harder to ignore. 17 more ships requesting transfer to rear guard positions, his aide Sektar reported nervously. The crews are claiming equipment malfunctions. Thakmor's yellow eyes narrowed. Equipment malfunctions or cowardice? The crew of the Bloodrender has sealed themselves in their quarters and refuses to come out. They keep muttering about the death spawn of Terra coming through the walls. The War Master slammed his fist against his command chair. In 3 decades of conquest, he had never seen his warriors display such fear. The humans had done something to his fleet that was worse than destroying it. They had broken its spirit. On the human side, Captain Sora Kim studied the tactical displays from her rebuilt command center. Sol's Fury had been patched together, with parts from destroyed Krek ships, giving her vessel a strange hybrid appearance. But she was functional, and that was all that mattered. The Kreks are regrouping at the edge of the system, Commander Jinwoo Park reported. But their formation is loose. Morale seems to be cracking. Lieutenant Commander Minna Choi looked up from her intelligence station. I'm intercepting communications from their fleet. They're calling us demons and nightmares from the void. Some crews are asking if we're even really alive. Dr. Hagen, who had become an unofficial observer on the human bridge, found himself fascinated by this development. They cannot understand how you survive conditions that would kill them. To their minds, you must be something supernatural. That works in our favor, Captain Kim said. Fear is a weapon, and we've learned how to use it. The next phase of the battle began not with weapons, but with lessons. Dr. Heijun had requested permission to work with the human crew, and what he learned changed his understanding of warfare forever. Chief Engineer Dong-Su was teaching a group of Valari technicians how to weaponize their own infrastructure. Your water processing plants, he explained patiently to the wide-eyed aquatic beings, can be converted into chemical weapons factories. The same systems that clean your water can create compounds that will eat through Krek's armor. But these are civilian facilities, one of the Valari engineers protested. They are not designed for warfare, Dong-Su smiled. On Earth, everything is designed for warfare eventually. You just have to know how to look at it. Your geothermal taps? Those can become plasma cannons. Your communication arrays? Perfect for electromagnetic pulse bombs. The Valari engineers exchanged uncertain glances. The concept of turning peaceful technology into weapons seemed almost immoral to their gentle nature. But as reports came in of more Krex atrocities from other systems, their resolve hardened. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Wu Jin was training Valari civilians in what humans called asymmetric warfare. The coral cities of Lumina Prime had been designed for beauty and harmony, not defense. But under human guidance, they were becoming fortresses. Every tunnel system becomes a supply route, Wu Jin explained to Ambassador Temin and a group of city planners. Every public building becomes a strong point. Every park becomes a killing field where enemies are exposed and defenders have cover. Taemin's skin showed patterns of distress. You are asking us to turn our beautiful world into a battlefield. I'm asking you to turn your beautiful world into a place worth defending, Wu Jin replied. The Krex see beauty as something to consume. We're going to teach them that beauty can bite back. The transformation was remarkable. Within days, the peaceful Valari were learning to think like survivors. They began to see their world not as a collection of targets, but as a web of advantages waiting to be exploited. Dr. Haijun worked closely with Chief Science Officer Beora to adapt human survival techniques for Valari physiology. The results were revolutionary. Your people can survive in environments we cannot, Beora explained as they tested new equipment. But you've never had to. We're going to teach you how to use that to your advantage. The Valari had natural abilities that even humans envied. They could breathe underwater indefinitely, see in near total darkness, and withstand pressure changes that would rupture human organs. But they had never thought to use these gifts tactically. Imagine, Dr. Heijun said to a group of Valari volunteers, attacking Krex landing parties from underwater. They cannot follow you there. You become invisible, untouchable. The ocean itself becomes your ally. The volunteers were young Valari who had lost family members to Krex raids. Their natural peaceful nature was at war with a growing anger that even they didn't fully understand. But under human tutelage, that anger was becoming something focused and dangerous. The Krex made their mistake when they attempted to land ground forces on Lumina Prime's largest continent. War Master Thakmer had decided that the humans were some kind of space-based anomaly that would be powerless on a planetary surface. He was catastrophically wrong. The first wave of Krex dropships landed in what appeared to be a peaceful coral forest. The area was beautiful, with towering organic structures that glowed softly in the planet's gentle sunlight. It seemed like the perfect place to establish a beachhead. Then the forest came alive. Lieutenant Colonel Wu Jin had spent weeks preparing this area. What looked like natural coral formations were actually camouflaged weapon emplacements. The gentle streams that ran through the forest had been diverted into killing zones. The very ground itself had been turned into a trap. The Krex troops, expecting to face frightened civilians, instead found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to materialize from the landscape itself. The Valari fighters emerged from underwater passages, striking with weapons designed to exploit Krex biological weaknesses, then disappearing back into environments where their enemies could not follow. But it was the humans who provided the truly terrifying moments. Major Kyung-ho's Marines didn't just fight in the hostile environment. They used it as a weapon. When Krek's forces tried to establish defensive positions, the humans would attack during Lumina Prime's daily radiation storms, periods when most species sought shelter. The Kreks watched in horror as human soldiers advanced through radiation that would cook their internal organs, their faces protected by nothing more than simple masks and their bodies covered by basic protective gear. They're not even wearing proper radiation suits. One Krek's trooper reported to his commander, his voice thick with panic. But they keep coming. They keep coming through everything we throw at them. The breaking point came when Captain Kim authorized the use of Environmental Warfare Protocol Omega. It was a tactic so ruthless that even some of her own crew questioned it. Instead of engaging the main Krek's force directly, the humans began systematically destroying the environmental systems that kept the enemy comfortable. They targeted atmospheric processors, temperature regulators, and the complex life support systems that allowed Krek's troops to function on alien worlds. Within hours, the Krek's ground forces found themselves struggling to breathe, their equipment failing in the humid, high-pressure environment of Lumina Prime. What had seemed like minor environmental differences became life-threatening challenges when their support systems failed. War Master Thakmor received the final transmission from his ground commander. With growing horror, "We cannot function in these conditions," the voice reported, distorted by static and desperation. "The atmosphere is poisonous to us without our equipment. The gravity is crushing our bones. The local radiation is cooking us from the inside. And the humans the humans are using all of it against us. They fight in conditions that should kill them, and they're making those same conditions kill us." For the first time in his career, War Master Thakmor understood what it meant to face an enemy that had been forged by adversity rather than victory. The humans hadn't just learned to survive in hostile conditions. They had learned to weaponize those conditions against anyone foolish enough to challenge them. "Recall all ground forces," he ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "Prepare for full withdrawal from the system." As Krek ships began fleeing toward hyperspace, Dr. Haejun stood with Captain Kim on the observation deck of Lumina Prime's orbital station. The battle was won, but the implications were staggering. "You didn't just defeat them," he said quietly. "You broke them. You showed them that there are worse things in the universe than conquest." Captain Kim nodded, watching the last of the enemy fleet disappear into the void. Sometimes the best way to stop a predator is to show it what it looks like to be prey. 6 months after the Battle of Lumina Prime, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with a different kind of energy. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for an emergency session, but this time it wasn't to discuss defeat. It was to discuss the impossible. Ambassador Taemin stood at the center of the chamber, but he was no longer the frightened, desperate Villari who had pleaded for help. His translucent skin bore the ritual scars of a warrior, markings that told of battles fought and won. When he spoke, his voice carried the confidence of someone who had looked death in the face and survived. "Honored council members," he began. "I stand before you today not as a victim seeking aid, but as a survivor sharing a lesson. The Krex Empire, which terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries, has formally requested a ceasefire and peace negotiations." A stunned silence fell over the assembly. Councillor Vex of the Xanthari Confederacy was the first to respond, his insect-like form clicking with disbelief. "Impossible. The Krex do not negotiate. They conquer or they die." "The Krex you knew are gone," Taemin replied. "They learned what happens when predators meet apex survivors. They learned about humans." In the observation gallery, Dr. Haejun watched the proceedings with scientific fascination. Beside him sat Captain Sora Kim, now Admiral Kim after her promotion by Earth Command. She wore her new uniform with the same quiet confidence she had shown commanding a single destroyer. "Admiral Kim," Dr. Haejun said quietly, "your species has done more than save my people. You have changed the entire balance of galactic power." "That wasn't our intention," Kim replied. "We just wanted to help some friends who were in trouble." Dr. Haejun had spent months studying human psychology and culture, and he was still amazed by their casual approach to the extraordinary. They had shattered the most feared empire in the galaxy and spoke of it like helping a neighbor move furniture on the main floor. Counselor Zenth called for order. Ambassador Taemin, please explain how 3 human ships managed to defeat an entire Krex battle fleet. Taemin's skin pattern shifted to show pride mixed with amazement. They didn't defeat the Krex through superior firepower or advanced technology. They defeated them by being something the Krex had never encountered, a species that refuses to accept defeat. He activated a holographic display showing footage from the battle. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as human ships fought on with hull breaches that should have been fatal, as human marines advanced through radiation that should have killed them, as human tactics turned disadvantages into weapons. The humans fight like their world is trying to kill them. Taemin continued, because their world has been trying to kill them for millions of years. They have evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions that would exterminate most galactic species. A new voice interrupted from the chamber's communication system. If I may address the council. The voice belonged to War Master Thakmer, speaking from a Krex ship still in Lumina Prime system. His image appeared on the main screen, and the assembled representatives gasped at his appearance. The once proud Krex commander looked aged and haunted, his ritual scars seeming faded and meaningless. Honored Council, Thakmer said, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance, I speak for what remains of the Krex High Command. We formally request an end to hostilities and the establishment of diplomatic relations with the Terran Federation and their allies. Councillor Vex leaned forward. War Master, you commanded the largest fleet in known space. How can you simply surrender? Thakmer was quiet for a long moment. Because I learned what the humans are. We thought we were the apex predators of the galaxy. We were wrong. We are not predators at all. We are scavengers who grew fat feeding on the weak. But humans ... humans are something else entirely. The main screen shifted to show recordings from the Krex perspective during the battle. The footage was shaky and chaotic, filmed by terrified Krex crew members as they watched humans do impossible things. They fight in hard vacuum like it's air, Thakmer continued. They advance through radiation that should cook them alive. They turn their own injuries into tactical advantages. We broke 13 of their bones during one boarding action, and the human marine used the broken bone as a weapon while his system repaired itself. Dr. Heijun had seen these recordings before, but they still amazed him. Human biology wasn't necessarily superior to other species, but it was incredibly resilient. They could survive damage that would incapacitate most galactic races and keep fighting at near full capacity. But the worst part, Thakmer said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, was when we realized they weren't angry. They weren't fighting us out of hatred or revenge. They were just doing their job. Like fighting impossible odds was the most natural thing in the universe. In the observation gallery, Admiral Kim shifted uncomfortably. She had never intended for humans to become the stuff of galactic nightmares. They had simply done what seemed necessary at the time. The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted to establish formal military alliances with Earth immediately. Others worried about upsetting the galactic balance of power. A few suggested that humans might be too dangerous to be trusted with advanced technology. Finally, Councillor Zenth called for a recess. As the representatives filed out, Admiral Kim and Dr. Heijun made their way to a private meeting room where Taemin was waiting. My friend, Taemin said, extending his webbed hand to Kim, I have a proposal. The Villari Council has voted unanimously to request the establishment of a permanent embassy on Earth. Kim raised an eyebrow. An embassy? But Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. The environmental conditions ... are exactly why we want to be there, Dr. Heijun interrupted. Admiral, in 6 months of working with your people, we have learned more about survival, adaptation, and resilience than our species learned in the previous 1,000 years. We want to continue that relationship. Taemin nodded enthusiastically. My people have always been peaceful, but peace without the ability to defend it is just waiting to be victimized. You taught us that survival requires strength, and strength requires challenge. Over the following weeks, the applications poured in. The Silicon hegemony wanted to study human metallurgy techniques developed under extreme pressure. The ethereal collective was fascinated by human psychological resilience. Even the merchant guilds wanted to establish trade relationships, having realized that a species that could thrive anywhere could also do business anywhere. But the most significant change came from the Krex Empire itself. The monolithic military state began fragmenting into smaller, more peaceful governments. Without the threat of human retaliation hanging over them, many Krex colonies declared independence and began establishing democratic institutions. "It's remarkable," Dr. Heijun observed as he and Admiral Kim watched the news reports from Earth's orbital station. "Your species didn't just defeat the Krex militarily. You defeated the idea that conquest is inevitable." "We showed them something they'd never seen before," Kim replied. "A species that gets stronger under pressure instead of weaker. A people who see impossible odds as just another problem to solve." The transformation of galactic society continued over the following months. Military academies began teaching human-developed tactics. Survival courses based on Earth conditions became mandatory for space explorers. The phrase "Earth tough" entered common galactic usage as the highest compliment for durability and resilience, but perhaps the most important change was philosophical. For centuries, the galaxy had operated on the principle that the strong consume the weak. Humanity had introduced a new concept, that the truly strong protected the weak, and that protection could make everyone stronger 1 year after the first. Distress call, Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the Terran Hope, as it prepared to depart from Luna Station. Behind her, a fleet of 30 human vessels waited in formation, volunteers all, ready to answer the next call for help wherever it might come from. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the outer rim. The crystalline collective is requesting assistance with a pirate problem." Kim smiled. "Set course for their coordinates. And send a message to Fleet Command. Earth stands ready." In the depths of space, where the darkness had once hidden predators and victims, something new moved among the stars. Not conquerors, not scavengers, but protectors. And across the galaxy, civilizations that had once faced extinction alone now knew that help would come, because somewhere in a small system around an ordinary yellow star, there lived a species that had spent millions of years learning the most important lesson in the universe: that survival wasn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. Survival was about never giving up, and humans never gave up.